Welcome to the Career Connections podcast, where recruiting leader Stephanie Alston and operations leader Amie Thompson share real-world insights to help you navigate the job market, build confidence, and find the right career fit. Let's get into today's episode.
Yes, welcome back to another episode. Today, we are going to be talking about one of our favorite topics, which is interviewing. I am Stephanie Alston, and I am the CEO of BGG Enterprises, and we are an executive recruitment agency. And today we are going to be having another conversation with Amie, and I'll let her introduce herself before we jump into today's conversation.
Yes, and this is Amie Thompson. I am an introverted entrepreneur, and I like helping introverts grow and build their confidence, business leadership, and career. And today we're going to be talking about more careers topics.
Yes, so let's jump right in. Amie, everyone is interviewing right now. We've talked about how crazy the job market is. And with the anxieties of everything that's happening in the world, another layer of anxiety has become interviews. So let's start here. How do I calm myself once I found out that I'm going to be interviewed for a role?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like you said, it's a great stressor for people. But one thing that I like to try to recommend people, well, two things actually. One is remember that an interview really is a conversation. And so try not to make it more than it is. It's an opportunity for you to share about yourself and how you can help that company, how you can bring value to the company, but it's also an opportunity for that person that you're talking to see if you would be a good fit for their company. So like anything else, everything is going to be perfect every time. Everything is going to be all the way positive, but they're opportunities. You'll learn about yourself. You'll learn about the company. You might learn that you applied for a job and you might not like it. Once you start to talk to the people, once you learn more about the company. So try not to get too stressed about it. It's a conversation. And in the job process or the job search process, you have to have a lot of conversations. It is just a part of it. And so the more you can just relax a little bit, the better. The second thing I always try to remember is the point of the job interview is to talk about yourself. And there's nobody better on the planet to talk about you than you. And so really don't stress about you, you know what you've done, right? And so there shouldn't be a better meeting to have than an opportunity just to talk about yourself and the good things that you can do for the company. So just try, I just try to encourage people, think positively about it. Yes, there's a lot of negative that can come in interviews. Yes, it's a grind to interview over and over again, but it's also an opportunity and opportunity to talk about yourself.
And I agree with you, but I will say that whenever, especially in this market, right, you know that there's so much on the line. You know that when you step into this interview, this could possibly make or break your financial situation over the next several months, right? And
Yeah.
so with knowing that there's so much on the line, even talking about myself feels scary. So what tips do you have for folks who maybe are afraid to toot their own horn because they don't want to sound overconfident, or they don't want
Yeah.
to feel like they're too overqualified for a role?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One is I think that we just as people need to think before the interview, before we're out of a job. How do you make money so that when you're in this type of situation, it isn't some kind of pressure filled thing that can make or break your financial situation, right?
Mhm.
So, how do you make sure that even when you're employed, you maybe have a little consulting that you do, a little freelancing that you do on the side? A lot of people hear about have different revenue streams, different places where you get income. That is so important because if you are in the corporate world, you can't control whether you're going to get laid off or not. You just can't. And so I think it's even taking it a step further and preparing for making sure you have the right savings, making sure you have how to make money, because the money part of it should not be what's driving you finding the right job. Then you end up making decisions that maybe aren't the best for you because you're hard up for money. So that's like one thing that we could talk about on another episode, which is really trying to be ready for any change that comes. But once you go into the interview, it is, it is important, but keep in mind too that the person on the other side is probably nervous, is probably stressed out just as much as you are. It's just from a different perspective, right? If you're talking to the actual person from the team that you might be working on, They're stressed because they're down a person or maybe two people. So they're probably having to do a job and a half. They might be stressed. Who knows, the person that was there that left, did they quit abruptly? Did they give notice? Like, there could be so much chaos going on in the company just because somebody has left, or are they growing so fast that they don't have enough people? Like, there's stressors everywhere, right? So keep in mind that it's not just about you and kind of how you're feeling. It's also how the other person is feeling and what they're going through. And you just have to, I'm a big believer that everything in life is about choices.
Yeah.
You can go into your interview choosing to be negative, choosing to be stressed out, or choosing to be positive.
Right.
And I would just encourage people, choose to be positive. Focus on what you know, focus on what you can do. The job is going to be a fit or not. And
Yeah.
you being nervous about it is not going to change that outcome. So you might as well go in with a better attitude. And then that is actually going to show with the interviewer. They're going to be like, wow, this person is so positive. Like that's going to actually make a difference.
I love that. And you know what? Like, I'm over here taking notes. I love that you just mentioned, understanding that both sides are experiencing stressors, right? Like,
Yeah.
even though we feel like we have the bigger stressor as the one who is seeking a job, also
Yeah.
understanding that the company is also dealing with their own individual stressors. And
Yeah.
so, leaning into that, Amie, I would love to hear, how do you feel, or not even how do you feel, how important is it for job seekers to research the company before having a conversation so that they do have some kind of insight on what those stressors may be?
Yeah, I think it's 100% necessary to do your research, not only on the company, but on the people that you'll be talking to.
Mm,
One of the things that, the as much as we live in a world of technology and we live in a world of AI, we cannot lose connection and we can't lose the importance of people and relationships. And the truth of the matter is, people hire people they like. Just
that's
that simple, okay? And so you've got to come across, I'm not saying be fake or anything like that, but you've got to come across knowledgeable, not just in the skills that you have to do the job, but you've got to show interest. So when you can take a look at a company's, we're talking about more like corporate jobs, but you
right.
can go and look at the company's website, look at the latest news, look at the person's LinkedIn that you're going to be talking to. Maybe they just started, or
Yeah.
have they been with the company 10 years? Like, learn something about them to where you can get a feel for who they are before you go into the interview. But that research, that makes a difference, because then people feel like, wow, this person is prepared. They really want to be here versus just applying to every job that's out there. So that research piece is, I don't know how people can interview without it. Like, I think it's a necessary thing that people should do.
No, I agree with you. And, even on the business side of things, for me, I often research companies before we meet, because what I also want
Mhm.
to understand is, how will this current economy impact your company, right? Because
Yeah,
if I'm a
yeah,
job seeker, I do want to ensure, to the best of my ability, that I'm not going to be laid off. But if
yeah,
I see that, you are, just as an example, right? Let's say you are in the metaverse and you're a company who's focused on the metaverse. Well, I know that the metaverse market is on a decline, so I want to know in my research, and I want to be prepared to ask you is, are you all in a state of growth, or are you in a state of panic where you're hiring
yeah,
somebody, to your point, because someone abruptly quit? That is
yeah.
important for me to know, because then I have the opportunity to make an informed decision on if this is even a
That's
fit
right.
for me. And I do think that that is something that most job seekers miss, especially when they're desperate to find their next role, is that they're not thinking about, why is this role open? They're thinking
Yeah,
about how I can fill the job, right?
right,
And
right.
maybe that's not even a job that you want once you
That's right.
understand why that role is open. And so I do also want to reiterate the importance of researching the company, asking
Mhm,
informed questions once you do research, but then also understanding, like, is this actually a mutual fit for both
mhm.
you and I? And so even with that, Amie, I would also love to kind of hear your thoughts on, what do I do as a job seeker once I've read the job description before the interview? How can I effectively prepare myself to ensure that I am in alignment, not just with the company, but also with the actual job description provided to me?
Yeah, and before I answer that, I just wanna touch on something you said too about kind of mutual benefit. I think that is such an important piece, and you're right, it's something that people just forget about. Like, it's not just about you wanting wanting a job. You have to want to be at that company. We spend the majority of our life working. And so you want to be at a company where you feel like the culture is the right fit for you, the pay is the right fit for you, the people are the right fit. And again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to take a job. You
Mm,
got to be able to have some cushion so you can make choices. You can have somebody who says, "We absolutely want to make you an offer." And you're like, "You know what? I don't think this is the right place for me." Like you
right.
want to be in that kind of upper hand position. But anyway, once you decide that you want to apply, and there's something else I want to point out, people, this is one of those like vicious cycles. You have people who are just applying for every job that they see. They're
Yeah.
not even reading the job description. They're not even looking into the company. They're just applying. And then on the other side of it, you've got your HR people who are getting thousands of applications for every job. And so there's this nasty cycle of how do you stand out? You know, you could be the most qualified, but how do you stand out when somebody who's in HR, they've got 6, 7 jobs to fill, and they have so many applicants to go through? And so one of the things that is so important, we're maybe talk about this in another episode, is the networking piece. At the end of the day, you might not get hired just because you sent a resume because 1,000 other people might have also sent a resume. Even
Right.
if yours is great, that's tough to stand out on a piece of paper. Like it's just tough. So the one of the things that I'll say is it's a long game and it's a numbers game. So you're gonna have to be patient. But I would not actually encourage people just to apply for everything. Be
Mm,
picky. Be picky about what you apply for so that you have time to do your research on the company and really feel like it's a place that you want to work. We talked about research already. Make sure that you know who the company is, you know what their goals are, you understand how the position you're applying for fits into the overall goals of the company, so you can see like what's the value that you can bring to the table. Going through, using AI tools is always helpful. Looking at the job description, I always say your job description is, it's like the answers to the test. They're telling you what they want. They're telling you the qualifications that they're looking for. They're telling you the characteristic. Like they're giving you all of the answers. So your resume, your cover letter, when you go into an interview, it should match with that pretty well. And then you're kind of regurgitating information back to them, and they'll be like, "Oh, wow, this person might be a fit." They're not thinking, oh, they just read the job description, but they're thinking they might actually be a fit. So make sure you really read what people are telling you that they want. I have an interview coming up, and I went and looked online to see, has the person that I'm interviewing with, have they done any interviews lately? And I found a podcast that he was on. Listen to the podcast. And then I can hear words that he says, things that are important to him. So when I get to this interview, I'm gonna regurgitate some of that back to him, not making it up, but just taking my experience and figuring out how I can weave it into something that he's comfortable talking about.
mm,
Again, it's a people business that we're in. And so
right.
you want to not just impress people with your skills, but you want people to like you. You want people to feel comfortable around you. And one way to do that is to talk their language. So if you know what somebody's goals are, if you know what somebody's challenges are even, then you can talk about those things. So the reason I say it's like I wouldn't recommend people apply for every job, because there's no way you can do that in a quality way. And
Mm,
you should really be looking for jobs that are the right fit for you, but also spending the time to research the company and the people that you'll be talking to. And I think in the long run, it's going to feel like you may be doing less work, but really you're just doing higher quality work to find the right fit for you. Hopefully that answered your question.
no, no, it does. And I remember when I was younger, and I have to paraphrase that I heard this when I was younger because I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. I had a friend say to me that beggars can't be choosers, right? And so my question for you is, knowing that inflation is high, knowing that insurance premiums are going up, all these things that are mounting pressures on job seekers, how
Yeah.
can they be both picky but also realistic at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great perspective, and the answer is, don't let yourself get in a position where you're a beggar. Like you
Mm,
have to, you got, we're adults. You know what I'm saying? We're adults. And I know that everybody's situation is different. People have kids, people don't have kids. They've got spouses, they've got debt and student loans. Everything is different for every person. But
right.
we're adults,
Yeah.
and so you've got to be able to put yourself in a position. It doesn't always mean having a side business or anything like that. It could be about saving. right?
Right.
So if you are employed, how much money are you saving versus wasting,
Mm.
right? So that again, you cannot predict when a company's going to have a downturn, when they're going to have a layoff, when something's going to happen, when you need to quit. Maybe there's a reason that you need to leave your job. You can't always predict that, but focusing on the things you can control, when you have a little bit of money saved, you're not a beggar anymore, right? You don't have to take something just because it's offered to you. But when you are broke and you're living check to check, you're going to have to take that first offer that comes in, and then you might be miserable for a couple years while you're doing a job that you didn't really want. So I think there's a like not everybody, but certainly there's an air of always wanting everybody else to do something for you, but we don't do enough for ourselves.
Oh,
So
that's
take
true.
ownership of the things that you can take ownership of and control, which is your money, your time, where you're spending your time. Make sure you're not, yes, I agree. Beggars can't be choosers. Beggars can't be picky. So don't be a beggar,
Mm.
right? Don't look for the answer of how can I be a beggar and still be picky, right? How about not be a beggar? Like that's where you want to focus on. And that takes work. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That takes work. But, like I said, we're adults.
Yeah. No, that is a great perspective. And one thing that you mentioned was learning how to take ownership, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. How do I
Yeah.
take ownership during the interview process, right? So
Yeah.
let's bring to the table the STAR method, right? So we're talking situation, task, action, and result. How do I
Yeah.
take ownership when asked tough questions during the interview to make sure that I'm implementing that STAR method?
Yeah. So let me say something first that is I think really helpful and probably a different perspective, which is I mentioned this before, the people that you're interviewing with, you can't make an assumption that they're expert interviewers or that they have so much free time to interview people. They are stressed, they are short on time. They don't want to think of questions to ask you for the interview. They wish somebody would just fall in their lap and be like, this is the perfect candidate, right? So use that to your advantage. And what I mean by that is own the interview, direct the interview as much as you can. People will ask you questions about the things that you've shared with them. So, something that they saw in your LinkedIn or something in your resume, send something in advance and say, here are some things, just a couple of things. I went to your website, I checked out your LinkedIn. Here are a couple of things I'd love for us to talk through during the interview process. So, as much as you can, try to take ownership of the interview. When I was very, very young, I had more of like a data and analytics role. And I used to take it was like way back in the day, I used to make a portfolio for people. So it had examples of projects I've done and results and things like that. And I would walk into the interview with that. And I would say, I just brought this for you. I thought we could look at it and it can help guide what we talk about.
Mhm.
And what would happen all the time is that they would just ask me questions only about what was in that document. Well, since I put it together, then guess what? I can answer all the questions about what's in the document. What you want to do is try not to make it where the questions are going to be unknown to you. So try to guide as much as you can and share as much information as advanced as you can. As far as like different types of, behavioral questions and using the STAR method, I think the key there is just practice. There are so many opportunities. There's so many things online about different types of interviews. People can be, it can be a little predictable in that way. So you shouldn't be shocked by anything that comes as far as questions. So think back through your experience, have examples from your work experience, projects you've worked on, initiatives that you've led, teams that you've led that can cover 3 or 4 different questions. So if they ask you, "Hey, tell me a time when you did this," you have 3 or 4 scenarios that are like your go-to. But it really always comes back to taking ownership of your experience, um, your work life, so that you feel confident and comfortable talking about it. Because that's all, it's just a conversation about your work, and almost anything can be spun in any direction that you need to spin it in, but it takes practice. It
Right.
takes practice, so make sure that you're practicing that as well.
So how can I practice that, right? So
Yeah.
would you suggest me practice with a friend or should I maybe lean on AI tools to be able to help me practice?
I would say both. I mean, if you have folks, in your network, I would say another example. I joined this networking group a couple of weeks ago for job seekers, right? So everybody's in the same stage in their life looking for another job, and the leader of that group encourages networking, encourages us do a one-on-one call with everybody on this call, get to know them. You could find 5 or 10 people through networking groups where you just practice interviewing each other, because that practice helps with confidence, and it helps with like calmness and not being so stressed out. I think practicing, you brought this up to me, I think a couple weeks ago, about practicing with an AI tool, which I never thought about. But I
Mhm.
think that's a good way. You can, get the AI tools to ask you questions based on the company, based on the job description. And since you have voice, not just typing in AI, you've got voice, they can literally ask you the questions,
Yeah.
and you can practice. And then you tell it, critique my answer. What should I have said differently? What should I have said better? So there are a lot of things that you can do. Again, it comes back to ownership. You've got to be the adult and take the time to do these things. A lot of people want everything to come easy, and it just is not. It takes work, and the people who do all this work are the ones that'll probably find jobs faster.
Yeah.
They'll be more prepared.
Yeah, and even going back to what you, just so much, right? Like I am with you about using the AI generation to help you through the interview process, even down to the point where you mentioned earlier how before the interview you actually go and see if they've been in the media. So you found a podcast with
Yeah.
the person you're interviewing with. Share
Yeah.
that information with
Yeah.
the AI source and say, "Hey, they've been on this interview. Can you give me a
That's right.
summary of the interview, and then help me figure out how to answer these questions?" Based on this interview so that I'm impressionable. I mean, you could be
Yeah.
that detailed and get some really good feedback, but also
Yeah.
questions that help replicate what that experience will look like for you. So even
Yeah.
Amy, I also want to kind of take a step back a little bit because we jumped into the STAR method, but I don't think that is the interview question that gets people caught up. I think the
Mhm.
question that brings the most anxiety is the one that says, "Tell me about yourself." How
Yeah.
do we answer that question in a way that is one, it is very self-serving, right? So it gives you the opportunity to brag, but
Yeah.
also how do I answer the question in a meaningful way that makes the company want to know more about me?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That is probably the most anxiety inducing question, because it's so broad.
It is
Um,
for sure.
it's so broad. And so I've heard, being on the other side of this, on the HR side, I've heard people talk about personal. People talk about, so it's a good question in that, as the interviewer, you see, where do people's minds go when you say something like, "Tell me about yourself." What do they start with, right? But the thing that I would look for the most if I'm interviewing someone is the understanding that I really don't want to know about you. Like, I really, not that I don't care, but I'm really looking for, are you a fit for the company? Are you a fit for this job? Okay, that's what I'm really looking for. So then your answer should tell me about yourself, but it should tell me about yourself in the context of the job and in the context of working for the company. So please avoid just what you like to do, what kind of job you like, where you're most comfortable. Like avoid things like that, because those things do not demonstrate that you're a team player. They don't demonstrate that you're a hard worker. Like, you want to demonstrate with the answer, whatever your answer is, demonstrate that you are the person they should hire. You are the person that's a good fit. So even though it's like, "Tell me about yourself," it is a trick question. And just be very careful
That is
about that.
hilarious because I remember very early on, whenever I would be asked the question, "Tell me about yourself," I would literally begin with, "Well, my name is Stephanie Alston." Like, clearly, you know my name, but I just never knew. And I hated the game of having to answer that question. So
Yeah.
let me push back a little bit, Amy.
Yeah.
If you really don't want to know about me, tell me what you want to know. Like, tell me about yourself seems so vague. So
It
sometimes I have
is.
to even fight back to say, well, what do you want to know? Like, do you want to know about my experience? Do you want to know if I'm a mom or not, or I don't have kids? Do you want to know if I'm single or
Yeah.
married? What is it that you're looking for? So then I can tailor my answer, because what it in turn becomes invaluable to both you and I if I'm just giving you a whole bunch of useless information about myself. Because I've been in a position,
Yeah.
right, where you've said, "Tell me about yourself," and I go about my professional thing, and you're like, "Well, I really want to know about you as a person." And I'm just like, "Well,
Yeah.
why didn't you just say that?" Because I could have saved 10 minutes, right? And so I do think that even though we're talking about interviewing, we don't know who's listening to this, right? I
Yeah.
think we should be fair, not you, but just in general, we should be fair to also say, like, how can those who are interviewing be more intentional as well to make sure that it does not feel like such a tough question, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So here's what I'll counter with. An interview, I mean, at the end of the day, and this is gonna sound harsh,
It's
we're not
okay.
equal. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're unemployed. I have a job and I'm looking to hire. We're not equal. So
that's
I
true.
don't need to do things that you feel are good for you. Like that's not my
Mhm.
goal. That's not my goal. My goal is to find the person that's the best fit for the company.
Mm.
And so every question, even though maybe that specific question, and not to say everybody who asks it doesn't really want to know, but like that
Yeah,
specific question, maybe if someone asks that, they're trying to see how they're literally trying to see how does your mind work?
yeah,
What's your perspective? Because
yeah.
that tells a lot. And
That's
so if you talk 10 minutes about something, but you don't pause to say, is this going in the right direction? Is this what you're looking for? That
true.
tells me something too. So it's everything, every question, every answer is an opportunity for you as the candidate to prove that you're the right fit for the company. So again, don't look at it as what do you want? You know that they want to hire somebody. You know that the skills they want were on that job description that you read. So you actually know what I want and
This
you
is
know what I want to know.
this is
Okay? So again, sometimes it goes back to people being a little lazy.
mm,
If you're thinking to yourself, why don't you just tell me what you really want to know? That's lazy.
this is
I don't
true.
have because I'm not the one looking for a job.
That's
Like just I'm
true.
not the one looking for a job.
This is true.
People got to be tougher, I think, and people have to be more thoughtful. I'm
Mm,
looking to hire a person that I already laid out on this job description. So I'm looking for people who know that, who research that, who are coming to talk to me. If I say, tell me about yourself, then it's like, well, I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, but let's just start with the job description. Let me tell you how I'm the best fit for your organization and then start going through your experience. But stop me if you're looking for me to talk more personal or whatever, right? Just like
right.
ask those questions because that's what you'd have to do if you were in a staff meeting.
This is
Somebody
true.
asks a question that you didn't understand or you didn't think was clear. If you're talking to a customer and they say something that you didn't think is clear, you've got to stand up and ask a follow-up question or do whatever. But your interview is just a really good way to see who people are and what their character is. You know what I mean? That's what I think, at least when I'm interviewing people, that's what I'm looking for. Because I
Yeah.
can read your skills on your resume. I don't really need you to talk about
True. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that's a unique perspective. Because, like I said, I think that is one of the hardest questions to answer, no
yeah.
matter how high up you climb on the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question that I think is also anxiety inducing, depending on your situation, is when they ask, "Why are you leaving your current job?"
Mm.
How do I answer this when maybe the reason why I'm leaving is not favorable? Maybe, I'm not getting along with
Yeah.
my boss, or, maybe I've been let go. How do I balance
Yeah.
that out that's more positive and future focused versus worrying about the
Yeah.
past?
It's tough. That is a tough one. I think that that's where some AI tools can help also, right? And giving you some options. But I think the one thing that can be helpful is always focus on fit for an organization.
Yeah,
The thing that is absolutely true, everybody is not a fit for every organization at every stage in that organization's maturity. And so in some cases, you might work somewhere and for the first year, everything is great. But as the company grows or as you grow as a professional, you realize it's not a fit anymore. So you're
right.
looking for something else. Or it's not a fit. And so you and your, company just agreed to part ways, whatever the case may be. But that is one where you really have to work hard to try to make it positive. Unless you did something completely awful and illegal, you know what I mean? There should be a way
Right.
that you can turn it into a positive. Even getting laid off, getting fired, all of those things can be messaged in, I think it's important that you have a good working relationship with your manager. And I just didn't have that. And so I needed to find something else and they needed to find someone else that fit better. Do you know what I'm saying? Like just
Yeah.
making it as positive because the last thing you want to do is talk bad about anybody, your former boss or your former company in an interview. So you always want to try to figure out how to make it positive. You certainly don't want to be like, well, I don't know why I got laid off, or but you you don't want to say that. So that is something to work on. And if it's not If it's not clear that you're progressing, like you left one job and the next job was a higher title or something like that, you'll probably get asked that question. So that is something that in advance, a couple of questions that you are likely to get. Go ahead and get prepared. Go ahead and
Right.
get prepared for them. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of being mindful of not being negative during your interview, can you
Yeah.
give me a couple of your red flags during an interview with a potential job seeker?
Oh, of things that the candidate might say.
Correct. Yeah, that you
Oh, yeah.
this is a red.
Um, and everybody's different, but for me, yeah, any kind of negative, any indication where you're the type of person that doesn't do any kind of self-reflection is a red flag for me, meaning everything is everybody else's fault. Right.
Mm,
So the reason that you didn't get promoted in your last job, or the reason that you got laid off, the reason is always somebody else's fault. So that's a red flag for me, because I think being self-aware, what could you have done differently? Maybe the other person did do something wrong, but what could you have done differently is always a good thing. I think, let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, anything negative like that, you got to figure out how to keep that out of the conversation, because nobody wants to hear. I mean, it doesn't benefit anyone to be negative about your previous company, because you can always say, I just didn't really like the way the leadership was going. I didn't
right.
like where the company was going, so I felt like I needed a change. I've met some people in my journey who are employed, and they're just like, I just feel like the company's not going in the right direction, so I'm going to go ahead and start looking. Right?
Yeah.
There could be all kind of mess going on there, but they don't have to say that.
Okay.
Right? They can just be like, the direction that the company's going, it just doesn't feel like a fit for me anymore, so I'm going to start looking for something else. There is always, just like I said earlier, it's all about choices. You
Yeah.
choose to be positive or you choose to be negative. And
Yeah.
I want to encourage people, always choose to be positive, no matter how you actually feel on the inside. Choose to be positive, because nobody wants to hear
Yeah.
negativity.
So we talk a
Because
lot about
you're gonna bring that into our company,
this.
right? That kind of negative energy, that would be the risk, is that you're gonna bring that into our company, and that's not a good thing.
Oh, I never thought of it from a risk standpoint, but you're right. If that is
Yeah,
how you're leaving your last experience,
right.
then that means how you left may be how you come into this new chapter.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
that's a good point. So we've talked about red flags. Let's talk about some green flags, right? So
Mhm.
everyone that I've ever talked to who interviews a ton of candidates often talks about how they just enjoy getting good questions from
Yeah.
the person that they're talking to. What are
Yeah.
some good questions that job seekers should be hoping to come in asking to make them stand out?
Yeah. I think that, as much as, so there's two parts to it. There's kind of getting prepared before the interview, and then there's listening intently during the interview, so
Yeah,
you can shape some of your questions based on what the person actually said. But I think before the interview, that's where that research comes into play. What's been in the news about the company or the person, where you can shape some questions. But during the interview, a few things I always like to ask is about challenges. So
mm,
whoever you're talking to in the organization, what are two or three challenges the company's facing right now? Or what are two or three challenges that your team is facing, if it's at a team level? And then you can figure out how to weave in experience that you've had, where you faced that same challenge in another job or something like that. But I think asking about this, because everything isn't rosy, every company has its ups and downs. And so understanding what the issues are, and maybe you have ways or you have ideas or perspectives on how to make that better. So
yeah,
that's something, and it says to me, if I'm on the other side, this person is a helpful person. They are problem solver. They're looking for things. When people only ask questions like about benefits or salary or promotion, well, how long does it take to get promoted? I mean, like, people would ask these kind of questions, and it's like, that's self-serving. You're not asking
mm,
any questions to show that you want the company to be great, right? And you want to hire people who want the company to be great, not just them as individuals. It
yeah,
is, so any questions that come across where it feels like, wow, this person is really looking to make our team better and make the company better, that stands out a lot.
okay. No, that is that's actually great, because I do believe from my own personal experience, whenever I end interviews and I say, do you have any questions? A couple questions come up is, when can I start? Another question is, to your point, also asking like, how much does the job pay? In fact, when it comes to, for me personally, when it comes to salary, I would prefer to answer that at the beginning of the interview versus the end.
Mm,
But again, that's just me. That's very personal. Because I think that if at the beginning we have that conversation and I disclose to you what the salary is, it is then your opportunity to say, you know what, this isn't quite going to be a fit for
mm.
me because I don't have, like, I
Got
need more or I need less, whatever the case may be.
got it.
Um,
Yeah.
but I also think that I've never truly thought about it from the perspective of don't ask self-serving questions at the end. So don't ask about professional development. Ask questions that are more intentional to show that you really are going to get a great person when you hire me. And you
Right.
need me to be able to take you to the next level. So I love that.
Yeah.
I want
I
to end
think
with this.
culture let me just say this, I think culture questions are good. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? If you say,
that
like,
is.
"What's the
Yeah,
culture?" But, yeah, it's like, are you going to turn down a great job that pays well because they don't have a professional development program? Do you know what I mean? Like, think about the questions that you're asking. Is that really going to determine whether you say yes or no, right? So,
yeah,
it's like, not only does it come across as kinda self-serving, but it also isn't relevant. I mean,
yeah.
it's not really relevant. And so, yeah, ask questions that actually mean something. But I just wanna say one more thing. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's
One
okay.
question that people don't ask enough that I absolutely love is ask for feedback. So after you finish talking to somebody and they say, "Hey, do you have any other questions?" Yeah, could you give me some feedback? You've talked to me for 30 minutes.
That's
What are
good.
some things that you like and what are any things that you're questioning about my background? Right? And that's a tough thing to do on the spot,
Yeah,
okay? But that if somebody asks that question, I'm immediately like, yeah, this is like a strong person because they're able to number 1, that means you can take feedback.
right.
Number 2, it means you really want the feedback. You want to know how to be better. You might not get this job, but they might say something to you that helps you get the next job,
Yeah,
right? And but people don't ask, very few people ask that. So I encourage everybody to ask that at the end of an interview, either in the moment or maybe if you send a thank you note or something like that. But that to me is a powerful question that shows a lot about a candidate. I think it's a powerful question.
no, that is really good, asking for feedback. I actually have never thought to ask for feedback. I do, again, as a business owner, if I've had a client meet and I do ask for feedback, if they tell me
Yeah.
that they move forward with another company, um,
Yeah.
I think it's great. Because yeah, that is great because the reality is if you are hired for the job, you're gonna get feedback. And if
That's
I
right.
can see upfront how you handle
That's right.
feedback or don't handle feedback well, that's important
That's
for me to
right.
know upfront if possible. So
That's right.
no,
Yep.
that is excellent advice. So, Amy, I want to end with this question because I do believe that there are some receipts, right? Like people, not receipts, recipes. There are lots of things online where people say, "Oh, we're losing recipes," right? One thing that I feel like we're losing specifically in the job market is post-interview follow-up. How
Mhm.
important is that to you, especially when you've met with, say, 3 or 4 solid candidates and you can't make a decision? How
Yeah.
important is that interview follow-up just to say thank you? How
Yeah.
important is that to you?
I think it's very important. So when I'm doing I'm super old school, so I might just have like a spreadsheet or something of candidates and my notes about each person, and one column will be, did they send a thank you note?
Oh,
It's
that's
very important to me because number 1, it only takes a minute to do,
yeah.
and number 2, if you can't take the time, again, this is looking for how is this person going to fit in my company? So if you're in a client facing roles, are you going to have conversations with our customers and not thank them for and not send them a follow up? If you have a conversation with one of your peers or one of your superiors, are you not going to write a recap? Like it tells you about like the future, possible future behaviors. But I think it's significant, even if it's one sentence. I think it's significant in just closing the loop on your interview. So I would encourage people to always, always, always send a follow up, and I will add one more thing about the feedback. When I was running a business full time, and we would get, I mean, I had a tiny business under 10 employees. And if I made a job posting, I'd get 300-400 resumes. Like it was overwhelming. And then so I had the little automated, like we used Indeed, the little automated thing. You just click a button, they get a rejection notice.
Yeah.
And anybody who sent me a note back and said, well, thank you for your time. I'm sorry that, I didn't get chosen. Can you give me some feedback? It would be 1 out of 100 people who asked that. And I would absolutely take time, thoughtful time to give them some resume tips or give them some feedback on, what I saw on their LinkedIn or whatever. But nobody asked for it. Like nobody asked that question. Some people that I've gotten nasty notes. Well, I can't believe I didn't even get an interview. I mean, like,
Wow.
what? Ask for feedback. In this world we're living in, we've lost a little bit of the human connection
Yeah.
and just human touch. 10, 15 years ago, this wouldn't even be a question. People
Right.
would just do it. Right. And so don't lose that part of it, no matter where we are with technology and AI and stuff. Do not lose